Hi guys, Pat here. Just got a new tool, my first 3D printer. Today I'm going to show you how to get the most from your Prusa i3 Mark II. I bought the Prusa as a kit, so I had to assemble it first. I like building things, so this was fun for me. Plus, it gave me a chance to better understand how the printer works. Since this is my first attempt at 3D printing, I wanted to spend some time learning about the technology. Once I had it assembled, I spent hours running test prints trying to get it perfectly calibrated. That ended up being the hardest part for me. So whether you're building your own or buying it pre-assembled, let me save you some time with these 3 tips. Tip number 1, get calipers. This tip is probably pretty obvious to anyone that knows 3D printing, but it's worth mentioning for those that are new. Calipers are essential, so if you don't already have a pair, go out and buy one immediately. And you don't need an expensive set either. You can get away with a $5 set from Amazon. I bought a slightly nicer pair and it only cost me $25. I'll put links to both of them in the description below. Tip number 2, set your first layer height correctly. This will make or break your prints. If your first layer doesn't print at the right height, either your model will be squashed or it won't stick to the build plate, and that is disastrous. That's what happened with this model. The first layer was too high, so it started sliding around the build plate halfway through the print. With the Prusa, you can adjust the first layer height using the Live Adjust Z setting, but I found the instructions were somewhat vague, so I wasted a lot of time trying to get that value exactly where it needs to be. Instead, I found an easier way that lets you get the value pretty close to where it needs to be. You just need something that measures 0.2 millimeters thick, something like paper. I found that the 2 sheets that came with my printer measured to be 0.19 millimeters, so I used those. See, we're using those calipers already. Next, set your Live Adjust Z setting to 0. You have to do this first, otherwise your final settings won't be right. Don't skip this step. Then, tell the Prusa to go to the home position. Now, you can adjust the Live Adjust Z and see the extruder move towards the print bed. Adjust it until your paper is slightly catching on the extruder nozzle. Now, you know that the nozzle is about 0.2 millimeters from the print bed. You still have to tweak it to get it perfect, but at least you know you're pretty close. Just run the Z calibration G code a few times until your print looks good. Tip number 3, calibrate your extruder motor. Now, this isn't in the instructions at all, but I think it should be. I found that my first prints were under extruding slightly, which means it wasn't using enough filament in the print. In my case, it was about 6% under extruding. Luckily, identifying and fixing this problem is pretty easy. Using a Sharpie, measure and mark your filament 150 millimeters above where it goes into the extruder assembly. Move the extruder up so it's not near the print bed, and then tell your printer to extrude 100 millimeters of filament through the settings dialog. Once it's finished extruding, measure to the mark you made, then use some basic math to figure out how much filament was actually extruded. Once you know if your printer is over or under extruding, fixing it is pretty straightforward. The technically correct way to do it is through G-code, but that's pretty difficult. If you really want to do it that way, search Google for the M92 G-code command. But be prepared, you're going to have your computer connected to your printer. The easy way to do it is from within your slicer. In the filament settings, there is an extrusion multiplier value. Using basic math again, you can calculate this from the measurements you took before. For example, some red filament I bought only extruded 96.5 millimeters when I tested. So, I divide 100 by 96.5 and get a multiplier of 1.04. I put that value into Slicer and I'm ready to go. That's it. You should test the extrusion anytime you use new filament, and once you find the multiplier, save those settings as a new filament preset, so you can easily switch between filament settings. When I fixed these 2 problems, the first layer height and the extrusion calibration, my print quality improved dramatically. The 3D Benchy on the left was my original print. You can see that the bottom layer isn't fully filled in, and the center of the D actually fell off after printing. The Benchy on the right is the result after I fixed the Z adjust and extrusion. The first layer barely shows any print lines and looks great. I hope these tips help you get started with your 3D printer and save you some time and frustration. If you have any other tips for people that are new to 3D printing, please comment below. I welcome any help in improving my prints. If you like my video and want to see more, please subscribe and follow my channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.